Welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And we're actually going to discuss Neville Goddard and Darryl, who channels Bashar. Um, maybe it could be someone else you're really interested in. And this video is to help you understand these are living shamans, these are Western shamans grown up in a Western society. So Neville Goddard grew up reading the Bible, you know, and so his mystical experiences, his out of body adventures into the world of the shaman and the wizard, um, all get codified, all get understood through the roadmap of the Bible. And this is really important because how are you going to communicate internal experiences of the psyche, meeting archetypes, and working with those energies and knowing yourself more um, without some type of language? And language is constructed, and it's a medium, it's a go between an inner space of consciousness and awareness and understanding and mind, your mind, your thinking, how you interpret the world, and then it's reconfigured and spoken and written, symbolized in images, shapes, thought forms. And so this is also the realm of the wizard, and the creative and the artist and the mystic. And so whatever we do, our world is basically run and governed by language, communication. And you go, really, Onyx? And it's like, yes. Because when one energy goes to another energy in equal exchange for like reproduction, that's communication through the body and all the chemicals and fluids and all those things. And a product, you know, happens if that communication is done very well, and the DNA works and the process unfolds through time. You get an offspring. You get the result of those communications. Um, and so communication and language and symbols is highly occult, highly magical. Occult just means hidden. So, and what I really like about Neville Goddard and what I like about Darryl, who channels Bashar, is it seems they have a very authentic encounter with the unknown, with the extended universe, something outside the scope of your 3D perception. And the reality is, aliens, whether they exist or not, are equivalent to angels, whether they exist or not. Both of them, but they get to be archetypes as well. They get to be images that outlive the individual. They're in the collective. When you start working with the collective consciousness and archetypes, you're tapping into something greater than yourself. You're tapping into like a reservoir within an image of knowledge that goes beyond time and space. And so a modern archetype is an image of the alien. Uh, the Bible is myth. And according to Neville Goddard, he realizes this. He speaks plainly of the Bible being a mythology, a legend, fiction. It's a great work of fictional art. And so I like to say religion is believing in myths. Uh, and through the power of myth, we get idealism, we get something to strive for. So Jesus is a symbol of the higher self. God can be the symbol, a living symbol that you can interact with, could be of the consciousness, the oneness, universal will, who knows? But we see a personalization with these myths, a reinterpretation. And shamans have a tendency not to follow rules, to be are basically rule breakers, rebels, and through the rebellious acts, they create revolutions, revolutions of the mind, revolutions of consciousness, and they bring forth new evolutionary steps. Uh, so I really think of the backward shamans, the Hyoka, who might be riding a horse backwards, and then it turns out to be a great technique for shooting, your enemies while your horse is moving forward. You're riding. So one person rides backwards, one person rides forwards. Two people on one horse. You can shoot now behind you as well. So it's like re-equipping your vehicle with some guns that shoot out the back window. And so that's a revolutionary step, which can be, and when it's first done and we don't see how to mechanically put it all together and the usefulness of this accident, this usefulness of this bizarre behavior, we tend to laugh at it, we tend to discount it, think that person's crazy, or the behavior, or it's a mistake, totally wrong. We're embarrassed and ashamed of our child maybe riding upside down and backwards. We may view it as an illness in a society. We might call it dyslexia or learning disorders, or, can't pay attention. And so it can get mislabeled. But then over time, we see the usefulness, we understand what's going on, and it might turn into a special skill. Wait a minute, this person sees forwards, backwards, and upside down. This might be a symptom of their multidimensionality, the symbol of their psychic abilities coming online. And so dyslexia is a strong sign that someone actually has access to the astral plane and therefore also has some type of psychic gifts. Now, mainstream is the accepted mythology. Mainstream is the accepted belief system. And so when you start really sitting back and looking at the world, paying attention, being practical, you see people come up with all sorts of weird theories based on their point of view, and then we can get a mass amount of people agreeing to it. For some reason, they buy into someone else's experience, and it might become the new science. It might become the new religion. It might become the new truth. What happens if you have a personal truth, a personal experience that's not mainstream, that not everyone can really subscribe to? They're not saying, yeah, I had that experience too. That mainstream, that group think, that common definition might turn against you. And, you're going to be a heretic, a crazy, delusional, psychotic. So this is one reason why true shamans, true mystics are kind of rare. Because when you're not adept at speaking a common language. So here's two people, two different time periods, having these out-of-body experiences. And so one of the requirements for shamans is the ability to have out-of-body experience. Whether you physically leave or you can have some type of interaction through meditation, dreams, is one of the prerequisites for shamanism. The ability to travel into the world of spirit, the ability to travel into the world of dreams and travel up into the stars. And so they meet these requirements. Now, they are within context of their generation, of their time period, and and so when you look at the underlying principles, they both come back saying life is a dream. You can alter it like you would a dream. You can construct it. You can work with it. It's not as rigid as you think. So what are the mechanics of keeping your dream of life? And it's probably beliefs. And it's probably limiting beliefs that help you construct your reality and maintain it. And it's probably on repeat in your subconscious mind. So, through positive affirmations, adjusting your beliefs, you all of a sudden see and experience something new. And you have the power to choose, you have the power to be the engineer of your reality. So, it grants you a lot of freedom. These shamans had what we might call a spiritual awakening, or some type of awakening or dismemberment process. Once, so for various reasons, whether due to illness or divine timing, who knows, someone may be altered. You know, in Carlos Castaneda's work, highly recommended read, he talks about the assemblage point and learning to shift it, learning to move it. So sometimes a hard blow to the back could adjust it. Now that's a very crude way to do it, but that's the same thing as getting into a car wreck, having an out-of-body experience. Your assemblage point was moved. Going through a severe trauma or an illness, being frightened, being overly excited can generate enough energy to move your sense, your focus, your awareness. And these are, I would say, crude methods. There's subtler methods, affirmations, being exposed to a new culture. Go stay a week in the forest by yourself. Just being in a whole different environment can be enough stress, trauma, and disorientation to move your assemblage point. You start having visions, or you connect to a piece of yourself, more that multidimensionality. So what's kind of gone mainstream was the New Age movement, which was a response to get out of Orthodox religion. So if religion is a myth and you're all being forced to eat it, live it, and breathe it, it's kind of controlling you. And so no wonder why a lot of people wanted out. But they wanted to keep the good things going. And they really couldn't break down the model of religion because they didn't understand. One, it's mythology. Two, it's a belief system of the universe. So it's a roadmap of how you perceive reality. Shamans, a true shaman sees how you constructed your reality. They see your roadmap and they can help you find shortcuts on your roadmap or rework it to find new hidden treasures. But when you're in the developing phase of your shamanic and mystical abilities, you don't understand. You've constructed a roadmap within your psychology of beliefs. So what you believe, you perceive, and what you perceive, you believe. So an outward, unawoke individual, someone who hasn't been initiated, believes what they see first, and we call that logic and rationality. The shaman does things backwards, reverse, and inside out. So as above, so below, as within, so without. The Hermetic law has been around ages. It's pre-Diluvian, okay? It's pre-flood, These are, and so with these same principles, whether consciously or unconsciously going about it very rationally and pragmatically, like the wizard will do it, or very experiential, like the shaman would do it. The mystic does it. Either way, you end up in the same spot. The doors of the mysteries are flown open. And so both these mystics, with a modern Western point of view, which is very Western mystery style, they set out to understand the principles and the mechanics of how this is working. They're not really exactly going with faith. They're not really going with belief, but they understand how faith and belief, symbols, or weave together an experience, a movie, a video game. And so with these perspectives, with this outside perspective of the masses of the tribe, they come back in and share new knowledge, you know? So they're like, so Neville Goddard had a vision of him flying out into space and seeing this like giant him made out of crystal, like in a lotus. So he was like this crystallized Buddha figure. And that was the symbol of his like higher self or God consciousness. That was his own personal archetype. And he saw that this being was meditating and focusing, and actually the force behind him here on planet Earth having his experience. So he understood focus and awareness maintains your reality and maintains your existence. And if all it is intention, focus, awareness, then those are the same governing principles that maintain your world. So he came to these epic conclusions that everything is being projected on the screen or the mirror of space. Life is a mirror, the mirror principle. So he was teaching the mirror principle, which is a very ancient thing, but with practicality is very useful. So it's going to get noisy because my roommate's doing some laundry and our laundry machine isn't really like bolted down or doesn't have any padding. So in the other room, it gets really noisy. Hold on. All right, so it's still a little bit noisy in the background, but I don't care. So through the Western logic and reason, not based on like exactly tradition, Neville came up with some principles and shared them. And I listened to his lectures. So, and the only reason why I even got introduced to Neville Goddard was because some lady who was very out of balance in this New Age shop was, became a friend, then became a client, then became an enemy. And she was spouting off that she's like understanding Neville's teachings. And I'm like, no, you don't, because you're using your imagination backwards. You're creating fear, you're creating illnesses, energetic illnesses, you're playing the victim role and you're stuck in the martyr role. And the only reason why is because you're doing everything backwards. You're not really listening to Neville's teachings, you're not really applying them in your daily life. You haven't learned life is a mirror, what you put out is what you get back. So, and these are kind of like, I would say, life is a stage, and with that statement, you start to understand you're the actor, you're the person in the audience, you're also the director, you're also the playwright, you're also the person doing the lighting. So this is where multi-dimensions, parallel realities all comes into play. The director is you from another perspective. The writer is you from another perspective. The person out in the audience, the critic, the fan, the actor, all the other actors, the lights even, the stage itself could be seen as aspects of yourself. And so this is where Darryl, aka Bashar, really tries to teach you that, and then he says, there is no reality. Basically, shamans come to the understanding life is a dream. This is a dreamlike experience. If you're caught in the movie, you're dreaming, you're sleepwalking, and life is playing out for you, and there is fate and fortune. But once you awaken, like the Buddha, once you awaken to the dreamlike nature of reality, fate, prediction, fortune telling has no power over you anymore, because now you're not just the actor, subject to the director and the playwright's will. You are all these parts and pieces, therefore you have the power to adjust it. So there's liberation and freedom while you're the actor, while you're the playwright. So it's just like when a writer is writing something with a character, and then he has an intuition that the character doesn't want to be written that way and actually wants to say this and actually would strategize different. So the writer kind of gives up some of the control to the characters he's writing, and he feels like he's channeling these beings into existence, and these characters are telling their story. Then he's like, I'm not really a writer anymore. He's like, my characters are writing through me. And so I can't take full credit for this book I wrote with these wonderful characters. They kind of hijacked, they used me. After I learned how to write well, they started using me to tell their story. And so that's literally seen as another being or a projection of oneself, but it's also seen as another perspective through another timeline. And so we get a multi-dimensionality to the creative experience. So I can relate to that. I really love drawing fantasy characters. And I felt like the characters, I felt like the essence of the character, like the soul of the being, whatever it was moving through me to have the image come up on the piece of paper. And so I love to draw like elves and fairies and vampires and mythological beings. But then there was a point where I stopped writing my off, I stopped signing my artwork. Because I was like, sometimes it came through so strongly. These characters were coming to life on the page, and I just witnessed the birth of the image from the page, like materialize. And then other times when I wasn't in sync, I could tell when I was efforting it or when I was limited. It wasn't a co-creation anymore. And so we can understand these basic universal truths, and they don't have to be from these high level shamanic experiences and mystical, magical experiences. They can happen through very mundane things. But usually there's a skill learned, and then the mediumship or the channeling starts happening. So it's like stepping into the correct character, you get to become that. So if you step into the character of a mother figure, all of a sudden you start channeling the behavior and you become one. If you do it unconsciously, you're like, wow, I just had a kid, I didn't know why. I kind of felt intuitively that it was the right thing to do, so I decided not to have the abortion. Whoa, giving birth was an amazing experience. And you're along for a ride that you're not consciously understanding that you're choosing into. Now that you understand that you're choosing into it, it's not like a mysterious feeling. It's not a mysterious hunch. It becomes knowing. So now you're starting to get information from the director's cut. You're getting information from the actual writer. So the writer, now you start interacting with the writer, your higher self. And you're like, oh, it's not a vision of the future. I'm just actually reading what the writer's writing as it's being laid down before he even hires a director, which is me, and before he hires the actor, which is me, and before this all goes. And so that's the value of connecting to multidimensionality or your crown chakra. All things are one, all paths are one. You could say all dimensions are one. So living here, so the principles are universal. The reason why they're universal is because they're kind of unchanging. And these principles act as laws or the mechanics of how things work. So in Bashar's teachings, he has his like 4 or 5 principles. Like one of them is existence, and so these principles aren't changing. You can always tap into oneness. You can always call the writer. You can always invite the writer over to have tea. You can always talk to the director. You can always talk to the audience member You can talk, you can switch roles, you can shift your consciousness, or as Carlos Castaneda learns, adjusting your assemblage point, seeing things from another person's perspective. You're like gaining double the information. So wouldn't it be cool if you could be the person sitting in the audience, witnessing your performance, but then also be the actor on stage witnessing the audience member and get a dialogue going on? How much would you expand your knowledge? How much more dimension you'd be adding to your life, and your level of awareness, consciousness, inner knowing happens. And so it's like, it's great. But when you do it unconsciously, you think life is happening to you. So in order to have, so you might be living in a limited model of reality and you're not viewing it through the shaman's eyes. But once you kind of gain some of this information and you tinker around with it, you can gain access to it. We go back to the roadmap and language. It doesn't make sense for everyone to go out into a rainforest or go visit some desert tribe, or go study ancient texts in another language. There's a lot of roadblocks and barriers. But you can visit the shaman standing right in front of you who looks like an ordinary person of your same culture and listen to their stories, listen to their myths, their truths. So a shaman's truth, who is open and has all this experience, their truth and perspective on how they see the world and how it works is way different than yours. You can't sit there in judgment and say, that's not mass consensus, so that's not true. And so this is where dissolving the belief structures happens. You don't have that level of access to it all. And so you have to surrender that. We surrender it in a story. You go into the movie knowing it's not real, but you relax a little bit, and the more you relax into it, the more you enjoy the movie. And then you're like, wow, 2 hours went by. I literally left this reality, went into that one, had a nice escape, learned a lot of cool things, came back, then entered your regular reality, and you might apply some of those things. That superhero might have a few qualities that resonated with you, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to start acting a little differently in this world. So you literally went into a fictional reality that was believable enough to your own mind, to your own psychology, that inspired you enough that it helped you adjust your character and play the game of life differently. So you could say that was an enriching, quality, positive experience. So this is what's going on. We're realizing life isn't so rigid. And so you have to maybe soften your beliefs, loosen up a little bit so you can have that adjustment. And obviously the whole purpose, everything that we're doing is because we're trying to have a better experience. It's always directed in a positive. Now when you're getting negative results and the behaviors are negative and harmful, somewhere inside of you, you believe it's going to get a positive outcome. This is just basic logic. So you need to look at your beliefs and adjust them, and that will help you get over negative behaviors, and then you'll start having positive experiences, because the way you behave dictates the next frame in the movie. It dictates so the character, the way he's acting. If you want him to have a different experience on the stage of life, you have to adjust the script. So there needs to be the ability to edit. Um, so there's many ways to gain access to the playwright, and edit the script. You can do it in this dimension and push pause, get centered in the moment, and go, I need to respond to life differently. I need to see things differently. I need to act them out differently. I need to feel things differently and then act out differently. And so karma is what you think, what you feel, and what you do creates your karma or creates the script. So be conscious that you're writing your script and you're acting it out right now. And that's how you push pause. That's how you edit it. You make these course corrections by stepping into the present moment to make these course corrections. You can do it through visualization, which is just another form of language. You can do it through frequency energy adjustments. And so that would be the feeling thinking function to adjust your chemistry, to feel better, to feel positive. So in a weird way, you lie to reality. So you wake up. So I'll do that. Here's a good example. I'll wake up in the morning and I won't be feeling great. And I'll be like, the old script is running. It says, you're in your 40s. This is what it feels like to be old. Can you imagine the pain? And this is just a taste. You're just a sleeping tree. Oh my God. And then I say, no, stop. I'm like, you say this every morning, so stop. And let's look at this logically. Of course, in the morning, it's going to take a time. It's going to take you a good 5 minutes before you can really feel all right. And then you might need your tea and you might need your little morning ritual. Now assess the situation. Oh, I feel great. Today's a great day. I think, and so I'll go, there's more energy. And so whether you lie to yourself, whether you wait till that harsh moment is past, and then whatever you speak, you're actually writing into your script. And in a weird way, it has been written into your script. So you might as well start saying positive affirmations and seeing things differently. And literally, like the last month has been great. Like the levels of pain have dropped probably from 70% to 5%. That's a huge change. And that was through using the simple awareness of changing your script. Now what Bashar does